Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest, absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old-timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, Southern Appalachian Herbs at blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs.
Hey y'all, welcome to today's show. It's a fall day. Let's just put it that way. It's chilly, it's rainy. We're actually going to have record lows for the year. I think tomorrow. Um, we may get a frost, but the daytime high, it's got a lot colder than this before this time of year, but the daytime high is going to be lower than normal. So I think that's what the weather guy was trying to say. But anyway, it's cloudy, it's rainy, it's chilly, and the leaves are red and yellow and orange. And um, if you live in the mountains of North Carolina, this is like why we love it. I know that's like crazy to most people. If you live on the Pacific Northwest, you get it. Maybe up in Maine, they're different places where summers are great. Summers are beautiful. Much rather be in the mountains in the summertime than where it's hot. But they're crowded. They're really crowded. And this is the time of year the leaf lookers will come up, on the weekends. Um, but during the week, this is when I like to get out and hike. It's hunting season. Just kind of barely. I actually prefer to hunt in the winter than I do the fall. But, you know, it's a really good time to get out and go to some of those more popular trails and like to the waterfalls and such and not have to fight the crowds during the weekday because summer's over and people are back to school and work. This is really nice. This is when you can get out and enjoy the peace and the quiet. It's mushroom hunting season. That it definitely is. It is mushroom hunting season like crazy. And I love it. I love it. I love the apples. Trees are full. Um, there's a little old, there used to be a homestead not too far from my house. It's up a trail a little ways. Um, the house probably been gone 100 years or so, but the spring's still there. Spring house and apple trees. And I don't. It's not bear season, at least not for me. I definitely think it has to be cold for bear hunting, and I don't really need a bear this year. It's a lot. It's 400 pounds of meat on average. I mean, think about that. Uh, what's the average for a deer? 75 pounds of meat, So yeah, I mean, a deer a year, couple of deer will last me a couple of years, but a bear will last. But anyway, I like this time of year just to go up and watch the bears. Just wander up the trail. They're enjoying apples, and they don't much care that there's a human in their territory. They're not going to get off their fat butts and chase you unless you threaten them. Okay, they're not. Okay, I'm not giving you that advice. They're not going to get off their fat butts and chase me because I've been around bears like all my life, and I know how not to anger a bear. Most people do not know how not to anger a bear. First of all, most people never see bears because they walk with the wind blowing from behind them. I always walk into the wind. That's just a hunter's trick. If you want to see game, make sure the wind is not carrying your scent toward them. Make sure the wind is carrying your scent away from them. Okay. Walk quietly, sit under a tree and wait and watch and see what happens. Now, that said, I'm not getting within 100 yards of a black bear. Some people I know say you can just like walk right by them on a trail and they're just going to like maybe grumble at you a little bit. No, no, they will absolutely attack you. I mean, but when they're fat and happy eating those apples and they've been digging up beehives, they got plenty of honey, and they're not a, this is probably the one, well, I don't know. In some areas, maybe they're breeding and they can get kind of territorial. Okay. But basically, around here, this is the time where I can just go sit in the woods and watch the bears. They're enjoying all the mushrooms too, so I will wander up on one every now and then, and I have not had a problem. But again, I am not giving you any advice. Bears are dangerous and they will kill you. Remember, my neighbor thought he heard somebody knocking at the door in the middle of the night, opened the door, and it was over a 600-pound black bear crashed in on top of him and was trying to kill him and eat him. You know, pretty bad. Luckily, he'd done like 3 tours in Vietnam and was a deputy sheriff for the next 30 years. He has a sidearm. He actually hides a gun in every room. Yeah, that's really good advice, actually. G. Gordon Liddy told me that years ago. Hide a gun in every room where no one can see it, but you know where it is, because you never know what's going to happen. Well, the bear comes in on top of him. Fortunately, the bear actually knocked the screen door down, and the door came down on top of him, so he was protected for very briefly from the teeth and the claws, and he was able to scramble and grab, I think it was a 9 millimeter, put about 5, 6 shots center mass before the bear even seemed to phase him. And then the bear went outside and died, and he called, and a bunch of us went over and helped him dress out the bear and took him some meat. It was a good thing. But easily could have ended another way. I know another guy who was sleeping on his couch, and he had the window open. Summer in the mountains, you've got the window open, screens down. Bear just shoved his paw through the window screen and was swiping at his head. That's what he woke up to, was the claws scratching the side of his face. And, that wasn't a good situation. So bears can be really dangerous. But this time of year, I find that I can usually just sit and bear watch for hours, and I enjoy it. They're comical. They're really just fun to watch. It's a good time of year in the mountains. The turkeys are active. We don't actually have a fall turkey season in North Carolina, which is really stupid. Tennessee has a spring and a fall. I think Georgia does. North Carolina, no, it's just spring. But good time just sit and watch the turkeys, wander around your yard. And the deer are everywhere, even though it is deer season. A couple of bucks wandered through the yard a couple of days ago, browsing around through the plants. And it's just pretty. I don't mind that it's not sunny, and I definitely don't mind the crowds aren't around. Except the weekends when the folks come up on their motorcycles and like 500 of them drive past the house at 5 in the morning, blasting their motors as hard as they can to wake everybody up. That's always fun. But anyway, it being fall, let's go ahead and get into well, before we get into the recipe, how about that? Before we get into the recipe, we are getting near the holidays. I mean, next month's going to be Thanksgiving and then Christmas. And y'all, if you're thinking about buying Christmas gifts, well, always my books make wonderful gifts, okay? If someone's interested in herbal medicine, if they're not interested in herbal medicine, remember I got the cookbook. We'll do the recipe today from the Omnivore's Guide to Home Cooking. That makes a wonderful gift. People love my cookbook. So anybody in your life, male, female, of any age, give them that cookbook. It's got great stories. People enjoy reading it as much as they enjoy cooking out of it. I really appreciate when you buy my books. I've also written a couple of religious books. The Herbs and Weeds of Father Johann Kunzel and the History of Christian Herbal Medicine are both herbal and from a Christian perspective. But my book, Confirmation, Autobiography of Faith, is about my conversion to Catholicism. So, yeah, maybe it's not everybody's cup of tea. But for anybody who knows Catholic, definitely a great book. And if you're looking for something else, something you know, a few months ago, I began selling my woodcrafts online. It's judsoncarrollwoodcraft.substack.com. You'll see the link in the show notes. I mainly carve spoons, really heirloom quality spoons. I mean, they're handmade. I don't use any power tools. I cut wood that needs to be cut. You know, it's a storm damaged tree, or the trees are growing too thickly, or it's hanging over somebody's house. So it's sustainably harvested, you know, if that means anything to you. I use really good quality hardwoods. I only use a small axe and a couple of knives, and I make beautiful, in my opinion, well, other people said the same, heirloom quality kitchen utensils, mostly spoons. I got a beautiful scoop carved out of paper birch on the site right now. And I make baskets. I make pine needle baskets. I make baskets from oh, all kinds of stuff, really, from English ivy to honeysuckle. You know, I learned basketry really probably it began about third grade. There was living in the eastern part of the state near my grandparents, and there was a Lumbee lady that came to the school, and I think she did some stuff with scouts, and she taught us to make pine needle baskets. Later in my teens, I learned honeysuckle baskets. That's more of the Cherokee and Catawba Indian tradition, and white oak splint baskets, which were made by the Scots Irish and some German settlers of the Appalachian Mountains. So, you know, I like basketry. It takes a long time. It takes anywhere from 6 to 9 hours just to make a fairly small pine needle basket. But, you know, they're very collectible. People collect them as artwork, and people really enjoy them. And they're on the site, judsoncarrollwoodcraft.substack.com. And I keep my prices really reasonable. Honestly, I mean, people don't, okay, people have said before, I don't know what, you know, a basket's worth. Well, totally depends. Totally depends. About a month ago, my aunts visited, and they know, you know, I make some baskets, and they stopped into a little gallery. And here was something that I would consider to be a coaster. I mean, literally, it's flat, and it's like 4 inches maybe in diameter, and it was very pretty. The lady did some really nice work with honeysuckle, and they paid like $64 for it. That kind of blew my mind, honestly. Um, I uh, I got a basket on the site right now for 75. Consider I've got over 8 hours of work in that basket, not including the time to harvest and process the materials. It's all handmade, unique, they're one of a kind, collectible, absolutely. Some people, I know there's a guy over in Asheville that specializes in kudzu baskets. His baskets sell for thousands of dollars. He's a known artist. You know, this is a family tradition for me. My grandmother used to tell me about, I guess, her grandmother who taught her how to weave baskets. That she used to be able to make a basket that was so well made and so tightly woven it could hold water. You know, the baskets used to be essentials of farm life. You made baskets to carry food. You made baskets to pick cotton. You made baskets for all manner of things, and so were wooden spoons. You know, um, let's say 200 years ago, the average person in America, in England, and France, and Scandinavia used wooden spoons. The wealthy had silverware. The wealthy had copperware. Believe it or not, aluminum was for the very wealthy for a period of time. People would have a knife and a wooden spoon, and that's what they ate with. When a boy met a girl and thought he might want to propose, you know what he gave her? He hand carved a spoon, and that was saying he wanted her to be part of his family. And then his next job was to carve a spoon for each child that came along, and that was how one proposed. When you went to someone else's house, you carried your own spoon because you didn't expect them to have an extra wooden spoon. Each person had their own, usually carved by the father, and then the sons would learn to carve as well. I sell my spoons for around 30 each. I think that's ridiculously reasonable considering that, yeah, I mean, you can get a generic machine-made spoon, you know, down at the grocery store. You may pay 12, $15 for it. Okay, that's fine. You know, those have their place. Um, you can go to a site. There's a guy I know on Truth Social, professional spoon carver. Um, his spoons run $200-300. I mean, he'll do a little coffee scoop and sell it for $60. Again, he's a known guy. I sell mine for around $30, you know. They're all handmade. They're all made. They're sealed with walnut oil unless you get in touch with me ahead of time. If you have an allergy to walnuts or something, I can use flaxseed oil. Um, they'll last for generations. I mean, your great grandkids can be using the same spoon you buy today. I think they make wonderful gifts. So what I'm saying is, if you want to buy some really unique Christmas gifts for your family that are really reasonable, I mean, you can get one of my spoons for what the cost of a takeout pizza from Papa John's. And I'm going to send a handwritten note, and it's going to be numbered and dated, and it'll be collectible. Um, yeah, check it out. Judson Carroll, woodcraft.substack.com. Like I said, the URL is going to be the show notes. I'm working on a really pretty little pine needle basket today with a lid that's got a little pine cone knob. Um, yeah, I mean, I can't see why anybody wouldn't want to have that on their shelf or use it. Definitely very useful. I like making items that are usable. All my stuff, like most recently, I guess Friday, I posted a pickle fork, a cheese knife, and a mustard spoon, all matching, carved out of American holly for sale on the site. And what I like about American holly is it's tough. It's very fine grained. It's actually a little flexible. Um, I saw a similar set on Amazon that, you know, definitely not handmade by a craftsman. Um, Selling for around $100. I put mine on sale for 30, and that's including shipping. So you spend like $30, and like 5-6 of that goes for shipping. So I think it's reasonable. I feel comfortable. I know I shouldn't feel this way, but I always hate to feel like I'm overcharging somebody or somebody wants something that I've done and they can't afford it. Uh, I didn't grow up with a lot, so I've been in that position, you know. And so I try, well, obviously, I can't give things away. I'm not even really making minimum wage when you think about how long it takes me to carve something or make a basket, how many hours I put into it, especially when you consider going out and cutting the wood and chopping it and splitting it and, seasoning it and the time spent mailing and all that. I could definitely be charging a lot more, but that's not my goal. That's honestly, it's not my goal. My goal, really, I'd love for everybody to listen to this podcast. Everybody, especially y'all that get in touch with me by email and you ask me questions. I'd love for you to have my books on your shelf and my spoons in your kitchen and bowls. I make bowls sometimes, a basket or two. And, when friends or family come over, you say, yeah, this is a guy I know. This is Judson Carroll. He's written these books and he made this. And, maybe that makes it special for you. It makes it special for me. That's for sure. I mean, yeah, that, I can actually tear up thinking about that because y'all, so many of you have been so nice, buying my books and telling me how much you enjoy them, the stories, listening to my long rambling podcasts. And I'd love to get to know every one of you, shake your hand, share a meal together. That would be fantastic. I'd love for that day to come. But you're looking for good Christmas gifts? Yeah, please consider my spoons, my baskets. Like I said, that scoop. I think it's really cool. And, the last thing my grandfather worked on before he died, he wanted to build a living history museum. Um, he found an old homestead that his grandfather had built that used to be on a stage road. And so, along with the homestead and the farm, what came with it in the purchase was an old post office, a general store, there was a tax shop, there was all this stuff that would have been that little community around the time of the Civil War. And he spent well over a decade collecting antiques, learning to make replicas of things he couldn't buy things that he couldn't source that would have been period for the time. He bought an old armored Wells Fargo stagecoach. Yes, I mean it was awesome. I played it a lot when I was a kid. I was like, 7, 8 years old when he got that. Um, he went up to the Amish country and learned to make the old-fashioned horse tack. He bought a Surrey that had belonged to the governor in North Carolina in the 1800s. He filled the general store with old products, old canned goods and packaged things. I mean, it was like living. Well, if you've seen Old Brother Where Art Thou, and they walked into the general store. Well, that's how he had it set up. Uh, and unfortunately, he contracted ALS, and he never got to finish the project. He used to work as hard as he could and then just lay down and sleep out there at the old house because he didn't have the strength to drive back home before he was completely paralyzed. And one thing that, you know, I learned was how important scoops were on the old homesteads. They used a scoop for flour, for rice, for sugar, for grains. You used a scoop to scoop beans. You used a scoop to scoop seeds when you were going out to sow your seeds. You used a scoop to scoop feed for the horses, grain feed for the horses to supplement their hay. Scoops were ubiquitous. Every single household would have had probably a dozen made out of various materials. I collect books also, about old woodenware, spoon carving. I got one that's really cool. It's early American woodenware. And there's a whole chapter that's nothing but scoops. Scoops, we don't even see them in the house anymore, except you just maybe you have a little coffee scoop. But I just picked up a piece of birch the other day. I cut off some to make a spoon, and I had this kind of odd piece. It was a little too short to make, a cooking spoon, which is what I was thinking about doing. And I thought, well, what do I do with this? And I took it to the block, and I took my axe and I split it. And looking at the growth pattern of this wood, I could see the scoop. So this is the way I like to carve. I don't like to carve with patterns. I don't like to draw things before I do it. I just like to let the wood, my knife follows the grain of the wood, is the way I look at it. I just have a vague idea in mind, and then I just see what the wood reveals. And I made this birch scoop, and it brought back so many memories. So when I say you can have something pretty unique for about $30, that's the price of the scoop on the site right now. And hmm, I just wish I wish I could give you the memories with it. But you know what? You can make your own memories. So let's talk about the recipe. Let me get a sip of something to drink here, and let's talk about the recipe. Because as I said, it's cold and it's rainy, and what a wonderful time for some soup, right? And people really seem to love the white beans and onions recipe I did a couple weeks ago. So I was thinking, I love bean soups, and let's combine some of those fall flavors. I think everybody, thinks they might like pumpkins and hard winter squashes, but they can't find a really good recipe to learn to use them. And they're really in season right now. We'll get into pumpkins, maybe a show, maybe toward Halloween. But let's talk about, you can absolutely use pumpkin in this recipe, but any of your hard winter or fall squashes, butternut would be perfect for this recipe. Maybe a Hubbard. I mean, there's so many different, and like I said, definitely you could use pumpkin, but a nice, firm, hard squash. So first thing you do, we're going to make a soup out of all this, right? Let's take that squash and wash it. You don't even have to peel it at this point. In fact, it's easier if you leave the peel on, in my opinion. Split it down the middle, scoop out the seeds, put it in the oven, roast it at about 400 degrees for an hour. Take it out, and with a knife or a spoon, just scoop the squash out of the rind. That's why we didn't peel it. It makes it a whole lot easier. You can definitely salt the squash before you roast it. You can put a little oil on if you like, but sometimes the oil smokes. So I just salt it and pop it in the oven, leave it be, come back in an hour, let it cool, scrape it out, and I'm ready to go. So we're going to combine in this soup squash, Beans, those dried lima beans would be good again, or any bean of your choice. I love the taste of those dry lima beans. They have a nice sweetness, I think, that goes really well with squash. That's what I'm going to use. Of course, if you use dry lima beans, you need to soak them overnight. Or you can do a quick soak of bringing them up to a boil, let them sit for an hour, draining them. I always think they have a better texture if they're soaked overnight. We're going to use some greens. It's not quite time yet to enjoy your collard greens on their own because they haven't been, as we say, kissed by the frost yet. But greens of your choice, we're going to have the sweetness of the squash and the beans and the onions and all that. So it's okay. Go ahead and use some collard greens. Use whatever green you like. Kale is what most people would use. I would always rather have mustard, turnips, unless it's that dinosaur kale, that purple kale. That's pretty good stuff. Any greens you like. Spinach. Spinach is fine. Cabbage, yeah, okay. But I'm thinking more of a more green type of green. Purple cabbage, that'd be fine. Let's add to this some onion, at least one good medium-sized onion. I'd probably use two. Some garlic, maybe 4 or 5 cloves. I don't mean the head of garlic, I mean the individual cloves. What else are we good? I think because it's fall, apple, sour apple, Granny Smith apple, a wild apple like I'd get from the trees up there where the bear's sitting enjoying herself. It's a big old sow. She just sits there and eats apples all day. and, and bees. Yeah, she loves apples and yellow jackets, and she's just gorging herself on insects and apples and honey. Um, Apple's really good with cabbage, so that's consideration. But it was going to work real well in this soup. It's going to give it a nice fall flavor. It's going to complement the sweetness of the cabbage really well without being overly sweet. I don't want to add sugar to this soup. And some smoked sausage. I think definitely some smoked sausage. Now, the base of the soup is going to be a broth. If you're a vegetarian, you want to leave out the smoked sausage, you don't want to use chicken broth, fine, just don't tell me about it, as I always say. I suppose you could use chickpeas. That might make it a little meatier. Go for it. If you didn't want to use the apple, use tomato. You want something that's going to have a little brightness to it. But let's use some of that good chicken stock, chicken broth I tell you how to make in the cookbook that we keep on hand all the time, hopefully. You could use some pork stock. It's going to be a little heavy. It's going to be a little porky. Beef stock would be fine. But I think let's just go with chicken. Let's keep it simple, right? So, some celery, and for herbs, oh, and how about a hot pepper? Yeah, let's add a couple jalapenos. And for herbs, let's go with thyme, parsley, and sage, because sage goes so nicely with onion, pumpkin, and sausage. And apple, actually. Some of the best English sausages are made with pork, apple, and sage, and onion. Wonderful flavor combination. So, I'm assuming you've already got your chicken stock or broth. If not, go back and listen to an episode where I tell you how to do it, or get my book. We're making real food from scratch here. Let's take our smoked sausage and cut it up and brown it in a little oil in the pan. Throw your onions in there to brown with the smoked sausage. When the onions are about translucent, throw in your garlic and celery. And if you use an apple, yeah, I'd go ahead and add the apple at this point. And if you're using tomatoes, you can wait a little bit. You can add your tomatoes with your broth. So I'd go ahead and kind of get a little brown on everything. Toss in your greens, let them kind of sweat down in there a little bit. Toss in your herbs, season to taste. I should have said put your celery and your hot pepper in with the garlic. Add that about the same time. Let everything just kind of come together into a nice brown, rich mix of vegetables and the smoked sausage. And like I said, add the herbs. This is when you want to add the herbs. Then, I do this in a pot, but of course you could do it in a pan and then add it to the pot. Go ahead and put your beans in there, put your chicken broth in there, bring it up to a simmer, salt and pepper to taste. I think because you're using smoked sausage, a shot of bourbon would be very nice. And what's better than a shot of bourbon on a cold, rainy day? So that's it. Just simmer. I'd simmer the soup for about an hour. Add a little more of the herbs at the end. Taste as you go. Tailor it to your taste, as I always say. If you do this right, you're going to have the rich, I think I left out the squash, didn't I? Add the squash at the same time you add your beans. Okay. I don't have this written down in front of me. I'm doing this from memory. So you're going to have the richness and the sweetness of the beans and the pumpkins. You're going to have the rich, smoky saltiness of the smoked sausage. You're going to have the good, rich, comforting broth of the chicken stock. You're going to have the aromatics of the celery, the onion, the garlic, the herbs, and that nice sweet tartness of the apple, or if you wanted to use tomatoes on that. And the greens, which are going to give you a nice balance of the bitterness of greens. So this is what we're always looking for when we're combining flavors. We want to combine, and I usually go really minimal on the first one, which is sweet. And a lot of people like their food a lot sweeter than I do. I'm not a big sweets guy, but a little bit in this soup is perfect because it brings out the flavors of the pumpkin and the beans and everything. So the apple works really well there. You want salty, so we got the sausage and we got the salt that we're adding. You want savory, so we're browning our vegetables and we got the brown sausage and we got the chicken broth or stock. It's going to be in the onion and the garlic, so be good and savory. So what was that? Sweet, salty, savory. You got the bitterness of the greens, and you got the sourness of the apple. And the other thing, of course, I would add, and I put this right in with the onions at the beginning and the sausage. I cook this together with the sausage and the onions. Would be some wild oyster mushrooms because they're coming in like crazy all around me, or maybe some chicken in the woods. I got plenty of them. Now, I made the onions, I'm adding this as an addition at the end because you may not have wild mushrooms. Yes, you can definitely use mushrooms from the store, but to me, that's what's gonna. The mushrooms actually really are complemented by that shot of bourbon. If you didn't have bourbon, you could use brandy, you could add a little wine, you could add a little beer. There's something about that, and the browning of the meats and vegetables, the mushroom, the addition of a little bourbon, you get what that we call umami. It's that sixth flavor. It's that kind of funky depth of flavor. If you don't have the mushrooms, if you needed to add a little bit of that depth of flavor, a dash of Worcestershire sauce, yeah, go for it. I'd much rather leave the Worcestershire out, actually. Dark mushroom soy sauce. Now, soy sauce on its own has that umami flavor, but if you go to a store and look on the ethnic aisle, hopefully you can find one that's called dark mushroom soy sauce. Just a few drops of that will give you such a depth of flavor. You will not believe it. You will, I mean, seriously, that is really good stuff. But there are many things, that can add that flavor, and really the greens have a little bit of that as well. So that's a nice, rich, hearty soup. Get some crackers. Sit down. If you're like me, you're gonna sit on the porch and watch it rain in foggy, rainy weather, and it's chilly, and I love that actually. I know it will probably, it's depressing to a lot of people. I get that, but to me, it's like paradise actually. Um, I don't want it to go in forever. Be ready in a couple months for the air to just like completely dry out, and we get those cold, crisp days after a snow. But right now, yeah, I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. Fire in the fireplace, bowl of hot soup, glass of bourbon. I'm pretty happy right now, actually. So, um, pretty just enjoying life with my dog in the mountains, and he's enjoying this weather too because this is what border collies are made for. I mean, this is Scottish weather. He's a wee border collie. But anyway, let's get into the herbs because that's what you came for. Yeah, I know. Actually, I think as many people come for the recipes as come for the herbs these days. So, at least from the feedback I'm getting. And then some people just like to hear me tell stories. It's really strange. I never would have guessed this. There have been like, I'm going to say maybe 7 or 8 people over the past like 2, 3 years. Now, I'm actually coming up on my 3rd-year anniversary. I'm coming up on the 156th show. People tell me that my voice relaxes them, and that's strange. But I guess it's a Southern accent. I am sort of a natural storyteller. Some people tell me they put me on my podcast to help them go to sleep, or if they're feeling anxiety. they put on my podcast and enjoy it. So, hey, if that's a service I can offer, uh, you know, why not, right? So, I'm actually going to talk about two herbs today because the first one is little known, little written about it. It's one of this is from my book, The Medicinal Weeds and Grasses of the American South, which, as I always say, is really for the entire all of North America and most of South America and a good bit of Europe because these plants are not exclusive to my region, but it's my reference point. The herb is one you really want to know, especially this time of year, which is cold and flu and COVID season, RSV, whatever. My, how the world's changed. It's Baccharis hamifolia. The common name for this is actually consumption weed. So it's an herb that probably 90 99,000 out of 100,000 herbalists have never heard of. Probably 99,999. I mean, like nobody knows about this herb, um, but you should. If you're an herbalist, go ahead and make note of this. This is one you're going to want to look into for lung issues, for chest congestion, and these respiratory viruses. Um, it also goes by the name of Coyote Bush, Eastern Baccharis, that's Baccharis, by the way. High Tide Bush, Salt Marsh Elder, Sea Myrtle, and Silvering. But consumption weed was what it was commonly known as in colonial times, probably up until about the Civil War. And looking into this herb, the reason it's not well known is it has a reputation of being slightly toxic to livestock. So there was an effort to eradicate it. People kind of stopped using it. It was used as a hedge to help prevent erosion in coastal areas. So this is one that is native more to coastal areas. Really useful herb. One of my favorite books about plants and everything is Resources of the Southern Fields and Forests. And as I've mentioned so many times, when the Civil War began, the North blockaded the South to starve us out. They wanted to cut off all food, medicine, textiles, you name it, so that the South would have to give up. It was fairly effective, actually. We held out until they took Saltville, South Carolina, Virginia, sorry, Saltville, Virginia, which was the main source of salt. And yeah, you can make sea salt, but that's kind of a long process. Mined salt, like from Saltville, was what was the lifeblood of the southern United States. And when they took the salt away, that was pretty much the end of the South. Of course, what also happened was Colonel Purdy mistakenly killed Stonewall Jackson in a raid in foggy weather like this. He thought Stonewall's troops were part of the Northern Army, and he raided them and killed Stonewall Jackson. And so Colonel Purdy from Bladen County, North Carolina, is largely responsible for the South losing the Civil War. It was a mistake. He was devastated. He was actually wounded and died from his battle wounds later. Stonewall Jackson was a brilliant tactician. Anyone who studies military history looks at, General Lee, Stonewall Jackson, Jeb Stuart, J.E.B. Stuart, actually. These men were brilliant. And even, what was his name from over in Greenville, Tennessee? Um, General Morgan. He was brilliant. Now, as a Catholic, I don't much appreciate him founding the Ku Klux Klan, but his actions as a Civil War general, he was brilliant. He was brave. Um, Sherman's troops were just raping and pillaging and burning people's houses and leaving everyone black and white to starve, committing absolute war crimes. And General Morgan's raids against the North were in retribution for that, and he definitely did some bad things too. But you know, Sherman struck first, but two wrongs don't make a right. But you've got to look at it and say these men. Well, I mean, look at General Robert E. Lee. I mean, he was the greatest um, of all the officers in the United States military. He opposed secession. He was an abolitionist. He opposed slavery. The only reason he became, Lincoln handpicked him to be the head of the Union Army. He became the head of the Southern Army because the North was raiding Virginia and killing people, and he had to defend his home. I'm not defending slavery or anything. I'm saying there are many causes for the war. But now people are going around tearing down his statue and acting like he was racist. He was actually very not racist. Winston Churchill wrote extensively about Robert E. Lee, about what a great man he was, what a great humanitarian he was, a brilliant thinker, a compassionate and good man, as well as being an incredible military officer. You certainly cannot say the same about Sherman and Grant, who were monsters, who were absolute monsters. Anyway, let's talk about consumption weed. Resources of the Southern Field and Forest, where I got on the Southern thing, was they would commission this French botanist to write this book to answer the question of what can we use of our native plants to replace everything that has to be imported. So it is like the seminal work. If you want to know what plants are growing around you, and you live in anywhere east of the Mississippi, actually, and some parts west, you're going to find most of these plants, but definitely in the South. I think it's essential. If you can find a copy of it, you can get some reprints for maybe about $100. You can find it in digital form on archive.org, and I would not be without this book, honestly. He said, I cannot remember the name of the author actually, but in this book it says, the plant is of undoubted value and very general use in popular practice in South Carolina as a palliative and emulsant in consumption and cough. Palliative means it would ease the pains and the congestion. When you think of palliative care, now we think of as end of life care. It means make the person comfortable, essentially. But that's not what he meant in this instance. He actually meant it was good for the symptoms. And emulsant, meaning it would loosen, soften, it would, help in consumption and cough. I have frequently seen it used with advantage and have often heard those employing it confess the benefit derived from it. A strong decoction of the root may be drank several times a day. It is slightly bitter and mucilaginous in taste. No analysis has yet been made, so far as I can learn. Shekut, I guess is the way you pronounce this man's name, Shecut, states that the bark is said to exude a gum so much resembling honey as to attract bees in great number. This, like many other of our indigenous plants, possessed of unequivocal utility, is unnoticed in the dispensatories and other works. In fact, Plants for a Future, which is like the biggest repository of knowledge on herbal medicine these days, only says the plant is used as a palliative and emulsant in consumption and cough. Now, I think this is really important. And you take another common weed like gumweed and pleurisy root. Those three herbs right there, mullein would certainly fall in that category. Those 3 to 4 herbs, I think could be of such use in respiratory infections. I think we absolutely need to have them on hand in times like this. And the second one I promised to get into is Brassica nigrum, black mustard. Like I said, I would love to use mustard in this soup more than probably any other green except for collard greens, but I just love mustard. So many uses of mustards, and I have talked about them before, so I'm going to be a little brief. The black mustard is generally the wild, weedy mustard. You can still use the seeds to make your own condiment. I make my own mustard. I've talked about that before. You just take the seeds, leave them whole, or grind them up. Combine them with a little vinegar, a little salt, a little wine, and you don't have to buy mustard from the store anymore. You can add horseradish to it. You can make mustards to your liking. You can make a fermented mustard, absolutely, instead of adding vinegar. Just let it ferment with a little salt, maybe add a little kombucha or whey to get that going. I love making mustard. You can add tarragon to it. You can add anything. You can add turmeric to it if you want that bright yellow mustard. I love mustard. And I love the greens of mustard as much as I love the condiment of mustard. I cook my mustard greens a little fat and throw a little vinegar on there and salt, and I'm good to go. I mean, it's just one of my favorite things on earth. You can ferment mustard greens, very popular in Asia. If you like sauerkraut, if you like kimchi, definitely try fermented mustard greens. But medicinally, they have been used for centuries, thousands of years actually, much written of in ancient Greece. Um, what isn't mustard good for? The greens, even the broth from the greens, so we call pot liquor, will help with an upset stomach. They help stimulate appetite. They help, obviously, the fiber from the greens are good for constipation, all kinds of stuff like that. Culpeper said in the 1500s it would strengthen the heart and that mustards would help you resist poison. Let such whose stomachs are so weak that they cannot digest their meat or have appetite for it take mustard seed, a dram, combined with cinnamon, actually. He also recommended cooking the mustard greens and eating them. He said it was good for the bite of the shrew. Oh, let's hope we never encounter that. I don't even know what a shrew is. Actually, I think it was a shrew mouse. Was maybe I have no idea. Um, he said, "Let old men and women make much of this medicine, and they will either give me thanks or show manifesting gratitude." I don't even know what he's talking. But mustard seed, they used a lot in. Maybe the woman was like a shrew, or the taming of the shrew in Shakespeare. I don't know. I'm not going to get into all that. But mustard seed was often used in chest plasters. Mustard has a heating quality. So again, good for the lungs. What you would do is they would spread that real raw mustard on the chest. This isn't French's mustard from the grocery store. This is kind of mustard I just told you how to make. Or actually just pulverized mustard seed or powder combined with water is what, or vinegar is what they would mostly use. Spread on the chest, cover with brown paper, and usually some fat on top of that paper. Just kind of seals it in. That breaks up congestion. It heats the chest and it can help break a fever. Um, he used it for like a million things. Um, well, maybe not. Okay, 100 things. Okay. He said it was good for drawing out splinters, and even splinters of bone from the flesh. Good to bring down women's courses. In other words, it stimulates menstruation. And yes, mustard will actually do that. Good for the falling sickness. That was actually epilepsy. I don't know. Good for lethargy, drowsy, forgetfulness, to quicken the spirits. Um, Sharpness, headaches is actually what he's talking. Um, in mustard powder, sniffed up the nose would cause you to sneeze, and he thought that was actually good for headaches. I probably would avoid that if I could. Um, Good for lung and chest congestions, viscous humors, distillations upon the lung and chest, procure coughing, and some honey added to doth there much good therein. Well, I don't know. The decoction of the seed, this is actually the seed just steeped in wine, is a diuretic, provokes the urine, as he said, and resists the force of poisons. And he actually said for poisonous mushrooms, which actually milk thistles can be a lot better for that, but the venom of scorpions and other venomous creatures. Wow. He thought that it actually was something of an aphrodisiac, stirring up bodily lust. Helps the spleens and pains in the sides, the gnawing of the bowels. Used as a gargle, draws up the palate of the mouth. Dissolves swellings about the throat when outwardly applied. Being chewed, this is again the seed, helps with toothache. It would numb the tooth a little bit. Outward applications hereof upon the pain place of sciatica. Yes, that warming quality, like I said, we use it as a chest plaster, can be used as a liniment to help with sciatica, muscle and joint pain. I mean, mustard is just really, really good. He said it was good to help the crook of the neck, good for leprosy, scabbiness of the skin. I mean, like I say, it's got like 100 uses. Miss Grieve in the German tradition used black and white mustard interchangeably. I like black mustard a little more, the flavor of it actually. But white mustard is a native of Europe, and she used it again interchangeably. Um, let's see. Well, we get into what I don't. I'm not going to say that mustard is a cure-all, okay? But if you include it in your diet, it's going to help with digestion. It's going to help with just about everything. And use externally, just be careful because it can actually, in very strong amounts, blister the skin. But it has remarkably many uses. I think Miss Grieve said the dried ripe seeds were official. That means they were actually used by pharmacists at the time and doctors. They possess rubefacient properties, meaning it warms and reddens the skin, and made into a mustard flour, or finely ground, in other words, used for preparing mustard poultices. Medicinal actions, the seeds, when ground, formed a pungent powder, but she was saying the white was inferior to the black. And like I said, I prefer the black. And she said medicinally have been employed from very early times. Hippocrates advised their use internally and as a counter-irritant poultice made with vinegar for disorders of the digestive organs. She said that black mustard in 1930s had been naturalized in North and South America. That's why we call it a weed, even though our ancestors brought it here to be used as food and medicine. Ancient Greek physicians held this plant in such esteem for medicinal use of its seeds. It was attributed its discovery to Aesculapius. You know what? I don't know how to pronounce that name, but they're saying it was legendary. Essentially, it was one of the main medicines used in the ancient world. Let me see if I can get up to some more modern use, and we'll wrap it up. Of course, black mustard was cultivated by the Romans to be used as a vegetable, and to use the seeds as a condiment. They did a lot in plant breeding. You certainly don't need to know that right now, I'm sure. Um, Oil of mustard is what's really very irritating. That's what will blister your skin. So using its natural form, I think, is a lot safer than using the oil of mustard. The Thompsonians used it a lot. They actually use mustard powder to induce vomiting. That's another use for it, and the Thompsonians were very big on vomiting. They thought that would help people a lot. So anyway, plants for future. Here we go. This will give you the modern use. Mustard seed is often used in herbal medicine, especially as a rubefacient poultice. The seed is ground and made into a paste and applied to the skin in the treatment of rheumatism as a means of reducing congestion in internal organs. Applied externally, mustard relieves congestion by drawing the blood to the surface, as in head afflictions, neuralgia, and spasms. Hot water poured on bruised seeds makes a stimulant foot bath, good for colds and headaches. Old herbals suggest mustard for treating alopecia, that's female baldness basically, epilepsy, snakebite, and toothache. Care must be taken not to overdo it, since poultices can sometimes cause quite severe irritation to the skin. The seed is also used internally when it is an appetizer, digestive, diuretic, emetic, and tonic. Again, emetic means it makes you throw up, but that's really that mustard powder you can get on the spice aisle, just mixed with water and drank. It'll make you puke. But every other way you can use mustard is actually going to stimulate the appetite and settle the stomach. Swallowed whole when mixed with molasses, it acts as a laxative. So mustard seed mixed with molasses. Very interesting. Decoction of the seed is used in the treatment of indurations of the liver and spleen. It is also used to treat throat tumors, imposthumes, carcinoma. Wow. A liquid prepared from the seed when gargled is said to help tumors of the synax. Yes, synax. The seed is eaten as a tonic and appetite stimulant. Hot water poured onto bruised mustard seeds makes a stimulating foot bath and can also be used as an inhaler where it acts to throw off a cold or dispel a headache. Mustard oil is said to stimulate hair growth. Don't use that straight. It'll blister your skin. Be careful. That you're going to want to mix that with cut that with some olive oil or something. Mustard is also recommended as an aperient ingredient of tea, useful in hiccups. Mustard flour is considered antiseptic. So, Mustard is sort of like a panacea. It is like one of the greatest foods and medicinal herbs and condiments known to man. And I mean, definitely, if I was going to get into like the top 10 essential herbs, mustard's going to be in there with dandelions and such that you just would not want to be without. The mints and the sages and all that. And really overlooked these days. Mustard as a food crop, mustard greens, was an absolute staple in early America, and now you rarely see it in the grocery store. It's very easy to grow, and it's one that will grow late into the fall, early winter, and you can have it going again early spring. I don't think anyone should be without mustard in their garden. You got mustard and radishes, you can get through some times when a lot of things aren't growing. And I mean, you're gonna have plenty of food actually. And again, it's so easy to make good mustard greens. Just take them and you actually want to cut them with scissors because the plant will keep growing more leaves. You can go back and get more and more and more. Raw, they're hot and peppery. I like them in a salad that way. Most people don't. They can be very hot. Just wash them, don't dry them, heat up a pot, throw in some fat back or some bacon fat or even olive oil. Toss in the greens. They will just wilt down with the water that's on them. Leave them uncovered so the sulfur gases can steam off. Salt to taste. Serve on a plate with some hot pepper vinegar. That's nothing more than apple cider vinegar that you pickled peppers in. And it's one of the greatest things there is. I mean, super, super good. And one of the healthiest things you can eat. So, y'all, it is really the season for mustard greens. Go out and get yourself a mess of greens, as we used to say, and enjoy them. But enjoy that soup, too. And like I said, those greens work really well in that soup. Anyway, have a great day. Remember my books, my spoons, my baskets, and such. Make wonderful Christmas presents. And enjoy this beautiful fall weather. And I'll talk with you next time.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, for your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.